we have a very interesting session coming up on bachelor's abroad profile building. How do you build your profile when you are just a class 10, 11, 12 student, in your undergrad days. So we got an amazing counselor who has been very popular among the bachelor's aspirants to help them navigate through their, study abroad journey or, different career journey. So let me introduce you to Pooja. So Pooja, hi there. How are you?
Hi, Nikhil. Doing very well. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Thank you, Pooja, for joining it. It was such a lovely pleasure to see you. I think since the last to this conference, it's been quite a growth. So, Pooja, I would want you to introduce yourself in a more informal way so that they can get to know more about you. And since you are going to be the host of the session, you are going to introduce the other mentors also.
Sure, fantastic. Thank you so much, Nikhil. So, hello everyone, and a very warm welcome to the Bachelor segment of the Mentor Conference. I'm sure you guys have had some fantastic sessions that you've already been a part of today. So, personally, I am a career advisor and career mentor. I help students first. See, a lot of times people are wondering about what course should I look to do, correct? But prior to deciding which course you need to take on, the more important thing is to decide what your career path is, correct? What is the final destination that you see yourself heading towards? And then choose a relevant course to enhance your knowledge in that sphere, right? So this is the process that I guide students through. I help them understand what their interests are, their personality, their aptitude, and then we map these to the right career options for them. So essentially, what we look at is a lot of times, right? If you look at admission officers who are looking at new intake, it's not sufficient for you to have great marks. Of course, marks are a requisite. You have to, score well on all your exams. But that for you is just the gateway into foreign universities, right? It's just the first step to get through that door. But there are another hundreds or even thousands of applicants who have similar scores like what you do. So how is it that you will really be differentiated from any of those other students who are applying, and how do you give yourself an advantage, right? So which is why we have with us today some experts, some people from fantastic backgrounds who are going to come into the session to give us their thoughts. Do we have everyone on board, Nikhil? Can I start the introduction?
Yes, sure.
Fantastic. So I'd like
So
to first call upon our first panelist today, Arjun Vaidya. Arjun is the founder of Dr. Vaidya's, which is India's largest Ayurvedic brand, which made a first of its kind D2C exit to the Sanjeev Goenka group. I really liked your description on LinkedIn, Arjun, where you call yourself a sixth generation Vaidya. I mean, what a fantastic legacy that must be. So Arjun completed his bachelor's from Brown University, and after that moved back to India to help with a family business and started to expand it to over 500 cities, 16,500 pin codes across India, and launched over 70 products. He was featured in the Forbes 30 Under 30 Asia list and the Business World 40 Under 40 list. It's a long list of things. He's a World Economic Forum Global Shaper, a mentor at AIM, and a part of Brown University's Young Alumni Advisory Council. It's fantastic to have you here today, Arjun. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Pooja. Always here to support Nikhil and ForeignAdmits. I spoke at last year's conference and really excited to see how the company has grown and what they're doing for the ecosystem. So happy to be here and happy to add value if I can.
Thank you so much, Arjun. So next, I'd like to call upon Shavi Agarwal. Now, she is the founder and CEO of Seaview and an M&A strategist at Deloitte. She's an entrepreneur with a demonstrated experience in career technology and ATS software development. She did her bachelor's in finance from Warwick Business School, and at the Imperial College, she finally honed in the idea of doing something for students and recruits, seeing the issues that students face while applying to jobs globally. She is the recipient of the Young Entrepreneur of the Year 2020 by the Indian Achievers. She is also a recipient of the Karamveer Chakra Award by the UN and the International Confederation of NGOs. So welcome, Chavi, and great to have you here with us today. Okay, so I think she's still joining in. Sorry, I saw that note late. So we'll move. Romita. Romita is our next panelist. Romita Mazumdar is a UCLA undergrad class of 2017. Post completion of her bachelor's in business economics, she worked with the Bank of America and Merrill Lynch as an investment banker in San Francisco. In 2019, she moved back to India to join a leading venture capital fund where she focused on growth stage investments in sectors like consumer, internet, and financial services. Now, her passion for consumer internet and building businesses has led her to take up an entrepreneurial journey with the founding of a women centric D2C brand called Foxtail. Welcome, Romita, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks a lot, Pooja, for the introduction, and thanks, Nikhil, for having us all here. I think undergrad is the most special years. I think those 4 years. So, and I know how special it can be. So, I love to be of help if I can be. So, looking forward to
Super.
the fact. Yeah.
And that's a great point that you mentioned, Romita. So there are a huge number of advantages to pursuing a bachelor's degree abroad, right? You expose yourself not just to a new culture, but also a new way of learning, right? You have the opportunity to combine various subjects and interests, and it really opens up a world of opportunities. Yet we see that while many students are, quite sure about going to study abroad at the master's level, there is a certain hesitation at the undergrad level, right? So for me, that would potentially be the starting point of our conversation, considering that both of you all did your undergrad, at Brown and Brown and UCLA. Can you tell us a little bit about what you feel was the real advantage that you all got, from actually going ahead with this process?
Yeah, go ahead,
Romita?
Romita.
Arjun, yeah, either of you. Yeah.
Cool. I'll take this question first. So I'll tell you. I think there are a few things that comes to my mind, right? Like for me, the one, and maybe I'll summarize it in 2 points. One is just independence, right? And independence just doesn't mean understanding how your finances work or understanding how to get your laundry done, etc. But there's this thought process, the way they are educated, right? The way the education works, right? It's not very question answer based. It's not very. You don't have a fixed book. You don't have a fixed fixed number of notepads that you're going to. It's very research based, right? Your schedule is your own choice to make, right? What classes you take, what you don't. So I think that decision making process that happens, that independence that comes with it, and the sense of responsibility, right? And just the sense of organization that comes along with it. I think that was for me a big thing, right? I was brought up in the Indian ecosystem. I came from a protected family. So for me, getting that level of confidence that as I was making these decisions every day, small or big, regarding my room or regarding my classes or regarding my career, I think that would be one for me, definitely. And I think second is just like, I don't think I appreciated diversity in life. I appreciated the learning you get when you meet so many different cultures and you really learn to pick what is best in each, right? I think that was very critical for me. I've grown up in a nuclear family, so I think that was the first time where I shared space with so many people. And I would say these two were learnings that professionally I can say definitely it's something I'm using every day, and personally definitely changes to a lot of things.
That's a fantastic point, Romita. I think, in the Indian ecosystem, we're so used to a more spoon fed culture, correct? Everything is kind of given to us, decisions are made on our behalf. So, this is something that really, that we can actually grow as individuals when we have this experience. Arjun, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I think just sort of taking off on what Romita said, right? I went for my undergrad when I was 17 and a half years old, and uh, just being on your own and figuring out things yourself, right? Like, I think if anyone asks me what's the best thing you got from your education in the undergrad, I would say the one most important thing for me was exposure, right? Exposure to doing things yourself, exposure to some amazing people, exposure to some amazing thoughts, some amazing cultures, infrastructure, all of these things, right? So I think for me, an undergrad education is actually about discovering yourself and creating a new, better version of yourself, right? 4 years at Brown, I went as a young young adult, and my dad says I came back as a man, right? So I think for me, the three things I would say I really got from my undergrad experience. One was exposure to some amazing people who became lifelong friends, but also inspirations for me. And I got to learn a lot about their culture. I went to a college where we didn't have as many folks from India or from Bombay, and so got a lot of exposure to their culture and made some amazing friends. I think the second thing is really independence. I came from again, like Romita, nuclear family, a little bit of a sheltered lifestyle, and doing laundry myself, cooking for myself, fending for myself, living on a budget, learning all of these things. While it may seem inane, it really made me learn about sort of testing myself in uncomfortable or new situations. And I think the last thing really was, through, at least for me, with the liberal arts education, right? I got to explore new things that I didn't know about. And with that, actually learn about what my interest areas were, right? So I went to Brown to study biotechnology and biochemistry and come back and take on my family's Ayurveda legacy. I ended up not studying any of that, right? I ended up studying international relations and economics, but eventually did end up, even after studying that, taking on my family's Ayurveda legacy and building a brand out of it, right? So I think taking classes in sociology, anthropology, entrepreneurship, politics, history, all of these subjects, and then eventually coming out a better sort of global citizen. I think that was what I got from my undergrad experience. But
Fantastic.
like
So
like 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 Romita said as well, I think best 4 years of my life by far, and I hope I'll have some better time going forward. But I think for now, undergrad was the best 4 years of my life by far.
So I mean, just to quickly summarize, besides, of course, the domain knowledge learning that you're getting from the course that you're doing at various universities, it's also a lot of life skills. It's a lot of learning about how to handle different things, how to handle yourself, how to deal with diversity and change. And super, guys, fantastic. Now, another question that comes up from parents and students pretty often is that does the curriculum that you study in India, correct, really improve or hamper your chances of getting into university? I think it's great because I think Arjun, you passed out of the IB curriculum, the Dhirubhai Ambani. That's what I saw. And Romita, you were at the CBSE curriculum, so you passed out of Delhi Public School, if I'm right. Super. Okay, so this is great. So we have both of you all, right? So can both of you all just touch upon, from a CBSE perspective or from an IB perspective, do you feel that there was a certain advantage or disadvantage in terms of applying to a university abroad?
I'll let Arjun take it because I think more and more IB candidates are today going out. So then I'll talk about CBSE.
Yeah, I think, look, IB definitely helps you understand the more application-based learning, which we ended up doing in college more. So I think it was an advantage, and it did help because when I moved from ICSE to IB, that was the shock for me, right? And then so transitioning to college is a little bit easier. But I would say one learning that I've seen is, in general, right, students from India and our schooling, from an academic perspective, is far rigorous than a lot of developed countries. And so, in general, I think just being from India and then going through the academic rigor that we've gone through growing up, I think we find it a little bit easier than other folks. And so that's one thing I noticed, right? The Indian kids in general, as long as they were doing the right things and studying, found it easier to get to college than folks from some other countries.
Super. Romita?
So I think I will resonate what Arjun said. Right? There were two things. There were pros and cons of studying from India, being from a CBSE background. I think that application-based thinking is what you develop when you go there, and it takes time. Right? Here we are used to that. This is your book. This is the curriculum. These are the you kind of have a set of questions, and things will come around that. There it's very very research oriented. I remember most of my classes there wasn't a book. You go to the professor's class, you learn, and then you figure it out. Like there are different authors you have to go through, etc. But there's not really that prescribed book. So it's a very application-based thinking process that takes time. So that kind of is a transition that I had to make. But I think the pro of studying from India is like you just are very very rigorous, right? There are a lot of things, especially when it comes to. I was a science student, so for me, my first year of college was very easy. I was science plus economics. So my econ 1 and 2 I had done. My math 31 ABC I had done, right? So my 31 ABC, like the first levels of math. So I think that process, and we have gone through like our 12th is studying so many hours, right? So we are able to sit at an exam time and really crack it, right? Plus we live in families, we know how to socialize, etc. So I think at least personally, I never saw my friends or me struggling with the amount of hours it required to be on the socializing aspect. But I think that was the good thing. But yeah, so there are both the things.
Super. So I think for all the students who are kind of listening in, don't worry about whether you're from a state board, CBSE, ICSE, IB, right? To a certain extent, like both our panelists have said, there is a certain kind of rigor in the Indian education system, and this actually helps us, right, when we're looking at opportunities to study abroad. So it's really an open field for anyone who's looking at then going ahead and applying. Super. Now coming
And
to
Pooja, like one thing here is that IB, I think, gives an advantage. You can get some units that you can use. I think depending on
Yeah.
AP, etc. That's the benefit that CBSE will never get. I could never, though I had done those courses, I had to go and there because they don't recognize it. So but it really doesn't matter in the longer run. But
Huh.
I think,
Yeah, I got some units, but then I didn't end up taking them because I didn't want to like finish college in 3.5 years, right? Like if you have the opportunity to do
you
all
enjoyed the
four,
process so
you
much, so
might
you
as well
wanted to
do
stay
all
there
four. Yeah.
longer.
I think I got 1 semester credit or 3 classes, but I didn't take it.
Okay. Super. Okay, so now coming to the application process in itself. Okay, now both of you all have gotten into top universities, and we know that the intake percentage is very low, correct? Admission officers are really evaluating hundreds and thousands of profile, and very much so, it's just like a few students who are able to get through. So, did both of you all actually take part in more extracurricular activities? I'm talking about the stage between maybe grade 9 and grade 12. What were some of the activities, and what was the story that both of you all really ended up telling through your application essays and your statement of purpose? So if you could share, that would be great.
Yeah, go ahead, Romita. I think yours is a little bit fresher in your memory than mine would be.
yeah, you're making me relive those days. Those application days were scarier back then. But honestly, I'll tell you, like, I love my application process. Once I was done with it really made me sit and
Once you
introspect.
were done with it.
Yeah, once I was done with it. But I'll tell you, so Pooja, my difference was I was a kid. I was, as a child, very interested in extracurriculars. So I was in debate. I was the head girl of the school. So these things I think worked in my favor, and I really didn't have to consciously make a call that I will go and do it. But I definitely know these things help me a lot when it comes to application. So when today anyone who's applying comes to me, I do think that US colleges don't just look at your grade, they look at your personality. Are you the right fit for them, right? Because it is a lot more than your grade. And hence, and I'm not saying someone who's just oriented academically, he or she doesn't have a good chance, but then that's a part of your personality. You need to be able to tell that story, that why is it that books are your main source of interest and not probably speaking in a debate or drawing it out, right? So my story was, there were a couple of things. I was very I was being the head girl. There were a lot of projects that I got into the school to motivate the rest of the crowd, children to be. And I was also the president of the environmental club in the east of India. So we had done a drive. There was a lake that basically they were removing the water to create a hotel, and we had actually fought against that, and that was, we made a human chain that was the biggest, the longest at that time. We had done a lot of stuff around it, and we were finally successful. So that really became the crux of my story, because I felt like it told a lot about me. I am very, very strong willed. I felt like at that time it talked about my interest in, when I take up things, I follow it through. It was more than what a head girl was expected to do. So I think it brought out my story and personality. So, and I have seen people write different stories. Some people narrate different stories. They pick up different examples and write a sum of those examples. For me, I felt like all those other examples, whether debate, this national debate, etc., was on my resume, and I wanted to talk about it, and I felt like it talked more about my personality. So I remember my University of California application was actually just one essay. So I talk about the story and why it tells who I am to them. So it's really that. But my recommendation would be always think through, right? I had to sit down, and my counselor made me write my personality traits that I like versus not like. And then I had to match it with incidences and things I do, right? So you're able to then formulate, and it is not easy. We don't do everyday activities thinking, okay, this is a part of my trait, or you don't do it, you just do it. And it takes time to think about your 4 years of life and why you did what you did, and put reasoning. But there is an inner motivation that comes through. So I think.
And what you said was very right, Romita, because you actually have to first introspect, right? Even before you begin this whole process, to think about the various things that you have done and how that story narrative can actually be formed through the choices that you've made over the last few years, right? So fantastic. Arjun, over to you.
Yeah, look, I think mine is a really nice memory because I think I did my applications now 12 years ago. So
Oh, wow.
really, really long time since then. Uh, I think the key, right, and I interview for Brown and I meet a lot of young adults or kids who want to go to college, right? The one thing I say is, look, your grades, your resume, your extracurriculars, all of those are available to the admissions committee. But your application allows them to learn about you outside of those grade report cards and resume, right? And what I advise people is from that application, while they're reading that essay, you should come out in that room, right? Or what is unique about you should come out in that room. So, I see a lot of people who end up writing about the most generic things that they think are interesting or people would be interested in. But I actually wrote one of my essays about cricket and sort of becoming the cricket captain of my school cricket team, not because it was a great cricket team. We were an IB school. We were like 40, 45 boys, out of which like only 20 wanted to play, out of which only 2, 3 went to practice every time. And I was made captain because I was the most punctual and sincere. But for me, that meant a lot. And so I wrote about it. Even though I had done great work in student council and MUN and all of those debates and all of that, I felt like cricket meant more to me. So I wrote about that, right? And I think it showed who I was. And if you write about something you're genuinely passionate about, it will come out easier than if someone forces you to write something. And similarly, I wrote a lot about Ayurveda, about my family's legacy and what I wanted to do. And eventually, I was fortunate that I ended up doing it. But it really came out with passion. I wrote about in my University of Chicago essay about the 26/11 terror attacks, right? Because we were in school at that time and what it meant for the city. So I think really genuinely writing about something that you're personally passionate about and you care about, that will come out as opposed to just writing about what you think people would like to see about you. Because at
Yeah,
the end
I
of
think
the
that's a
day,
fantastic point, Arjun.
yeah,
Yeah, because you know what? The authenticity is something that they can see through, right? A lot of people try to kind of access what they think is the right thing to talk about, correct? So the first thing that we see is community service, whether they've done anything or not. Social work, someone likes to kind of put a component of that into it. But it's not that the admission officers have so much of experience. They're able to see through it when you're just saying something for the sake of saying it versus when you, truly believe in what you're doing and making those choices. Yeah. Fantastic. And so, students, one thing that I want you to kind of note when it comes to profile building activities is it is not restricted to, it does not mean, like I said, that you have to do social service and that's what you have to reflect, correct? It is any activity that you engage in over a sustained period of time where you can show growth in that particular activity, where you can show some kind of leadership qualities that have come into it, correct? So, you can pick anything from your debates to your quizzes to your sports to like social service to environmental issues. So try to be true to what you are interested in and not just go by what you think they want to hear about you, right? So that's also another important thing. Okay. What for you would have been the toughest part of the application process? Like if you were to just put that down, like through the entire process of that, since we have students here who are now beginning their application process, what for you would have been the toughest part of it?
mine's a quick answer, so I'm just going to say it very quickly. I think the toughest part for me of the application process was actually managing time because it is pretty crazy to be doing the IB, to be getting your SATs done, as well as managing. I think I applied to 8 colleges plus three UCs, so I think 11 colleges, and each of them takes a lot of time. So I think for me, the toughest part of the application process was managing school, standardized testing, and the applications all together and meeting the deadlines. And I think the only way to do this, or had I done it again, all over again, I would say is do it as early as you can and prep yourself to be early rather than late.
Absolutely. Yeah. We always tell students, right? Please don't come to us like at the last fag, right? Start the whole process a year in advance. So you have sufficient time for you to think, explore, even making your college shortlist. Like that itself is something that's going to take a long time by the time you match your program, your requirements, and everything coming together. Romita, what would you feel was your toughest part of the process?
Mine was exactly the same. I think organizing myself when I had school, and I am from Ranchi, right? So I was the only student who was applying for it. So it wasn't like everyone's going through the process. So I had to meet school expectation. I had to do the classes. Like my school was not organized with this expectation that students have these timelines to meet, right? So organizing myself, understanding every in undergrad, almost every school has a different essay topic. Though you have the
Absolutely.
common application with certain schools. So what topics to talk of? How do you want to hit it? You have your SATs to meet. You have if you are not happy with your first SAT, you have to a second SAT to meet. So a lot of timelines are to be made. So just organizing myself and making sure that I'm not like 30th November trying to push the application 5 minutes. Like that was I learned my destiny in October when it was my first application. So I really had to get on it. So that was very tough. That was
Super,
tough.
super. Fantastic, guys. I think we're just kind of running up on time. So just quickly, one last question, okay? Everyone, talks about the fantastic opportunities in terms of going abroad, but the whole adjustment process, correct? When you have to really start doing things by yourself. How do you feel that whole thing was, right? Homesickness is something no one necessarily talks about. I mean, but how was that for you guys when you actually moved? How was it like in the first few months of getting used to a new country, a new, set of friends?
Yeah, I think I was super nervous, right, going to college, like supremely nervous. I was like really scared because I was thinking to myself, like, there are going to be so many people from so many different countries. They don't know me. I don't know them. How will I go and make friends? How will I talk to random people? This whole orientation thing, it's like so overwhelming. Like, there are like going to be like 1,000 people there. And how do I just go and randomly say, hey, I'm XYZ, hey, I'm XYZ, right?
Yeah.
Uh, but I think you build it up in your mind a lot. And then eventually, when you go there, look, these colleges have been taking in students for 100, 200, 300 years, right? And eventually, everyone ends up having a happy, fun, nice experience. So you're not different, and you figure out your own sort of space and your own niche and your own people and who you like. And I think a lot of that comes from what you choose to do, what classes you take, what extracurriculars you do, and eventually you find your footing. So I think for the first 1 2 months, it's you building it up in your mind, but I think I went to a college where it was a really happy place, actually. Brown is known to be one of the happiest colleges in the US. So it didn't take that long to adjust.
High on
But
the happiness index, I'm sure.
yeah, even if it does take some time to adjust, I think, look, people have been going to colleges for hundreds
Correct.
of years, residential colleges, and you end up figuring it out.
Super. Romita, what about you?
Yeah, so it is overwhelming, right? But I'll tell you, there's a beauty to diversity. Like I think all US colleges are very diverse because of the people, and even Americans by themselves, depending on the state they've grown up in, etc. They are very, very diverse, right? And the beauty of it is you will find your people, right? There are so many people, and everyone's from a different culture. You really I think my first week of orientation itself, I at least made two very good friends who are my best friends till date, right?
Today?
And then
Okay. Yeah.
so you find your footing, and some people might not footing on the day of the orientation. Some people might find their friends in their first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, but you will. And like Arjun said, it depends on the classes you take, your interest, where are you spending time in terms of clubs. So in terms of the clubs you're spending time with, student clubs you're spending time with, etc., you really find your footing. It's overwhelming. I was homesick for a month. I was very, very homesick. I still remember it. But within a month, that it's an overnight change. It becomes your home. UCLA is still
Correct.
my home. Like I can't. Every time I see movies, UCLA is shown in a lot of movies, and it comes on the background, and I'm always like, okay, this is where I did this. This is that's
Correct.
it's home.
Correct.
So it becomes home very
Fantastic.
quickly.
Super. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate you taking your time and sharing all these insights with our students. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks, Arjun. Thanks, Romita.
Thanks, Pooja. You were great, and thanks, ForeignAdmits, for having us. Take care, guys. Stay
Yes.
safe.
Thank you,
Super.
guys. Thank you
So,
so much.
So students, like Romita and Arjun were saying, I think a very important factor for you guys to consider when you're looking at your applications is really planning out your entire application process, right? Get started early, get the support of, counselors or admission specialists who can actually help and guide you through this process, because it's very unfortunate when you want to apply for a program, or if you miss a deadline, or if you kind of don't have the prerequisites that are required, and then you're not able to do something that would have been a dream, opportunity for you. So please begin this process earlier and get started, so you give yourself the best chance of scholarships, of getting into the best programs, and of following your dream. Over to you, Nikhil.
Thank you, guys. I think it was pretty interesting session. So we have a couple of questions before we wrap it up. One interesting question has been asked by Shresht is, I have a question that does your school or college which you study matter a lot when we are trying to study abroad or even after that?
Uh, I can take a first crack at it, and I does your school or college which is study. So very if you mean it from a perspective that from school to college, I think it does matter to some extent because certain schools have alums, and then there is a network, and colleges know the kind of profiles coming in. Colleges have people you can network, and there's all networking always helps no matter in what field, right? And if you are, it's relatability. Once you have an alum from a certain background, you kind of relate to them, you kind of know the profile taking in. So I think it helps from that extent. But then I think we all need to understand they are gonna admit you. They're not gonna admit a school. They're not gonna admit where you went. So it's really your personality. It's really you who at the end of the day matters. So yeah, I don't have any alum from my school who was at UCLA, in fact, in any of the US colleges from my school. So I think I did fairly well with UCLA, and I didn't think UCLA cared about it. I'm sure they did, and I nor did other colleges. But I don't know if Arjun has a different perspective, but that's how I would have.
Yeah,
I
I think look, it helps because maybe there is some face to the name or some context from that school with that college, etc. All of that. But I think sometimes it's talked about too much, and I think it doesn't matter where you come from. Eventually, it's the person you are and the value you are adding, right? And by the way, the other thing which is important is although alumni bodies are really strong and it's a great network to have, and I got my first job out of college in private equity through a Brown alum as well. It doesn't stop me who went to Brown to become friends with Romita and have a conversation with her, right? So I think it is important, but it doesn't limit you from doing what you like.
Perfect. So, guys, thank you for joining in. Thanks, Pooja, for moderating the session. You've been an amazing host. Thanks, Ramita. Thanks, Arjun, for joining in. And I believe the audience would have loved the conversations.